yo, it's your boy Ancient Albatross here behind the scenes as usual, but we have the usual suspects of the Cypher Unlimited crew minus one, unfortunately. Anthony not feeling well tonight. Hope you're feeling better, Anthony. You'll rest up, feel better. It's always sucky when you have a fever or whatnot, so yeah, definitely feel better. Gonna miss you out here. But either way, we got the ever lovely Alpha Dean. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us here on Twitch and subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a great help for our channel. We really appreciate all the support we've gotten so far. But without further ado, Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Oh man, tonight is an impromptu chill out night with none other than the infamous Charles Ryan, the man who's been taking over and getting more views on the CU than Sean K. Reynolds himself. Sean, you got some work to do because I think this puts Charles up by 2, maybe 3. So you got some work to do. But we're here tonight to talk about some Monte Cook goodness and some Charles Ryan goodness and some CU goodness. So we're going to start out with Old Gods of Appalachia, the current Backerkit that's going on right now, the crowdfunder on Backerkit. Then we're going to talk about Charles's foray into being a great author because he's already a wonderful storyteller. And then finally, we're going to close things out talking about some CypherCon goodness and getting these things together. So without further ado, welcome, Charles.
Hi, Dean. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. I mean, I'm just sitting here. I got the Backerkit page up. So let's jump right into this thing. Now, this particular Backerkit is called Deeper Still. Mm-hmm. It says, the blurb says, take your Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game adventure to deeper, creepier, more atmospheric places with 3 new supplements, plus a useful, immersive extras. And if you're new to the game, this is a great place to start. You guys are sitting at $338,240 of a $100,000 goal, and with 24 days left. And I think you released this at 10 o'clock this morning?
That's right. Yep.
Man, so needless to say, this thing is going to be a banger. What do you want to say about it, Charles? What do you want to make people understand here? Because with Old Gods, Old Gods is truly probably the most atmospheric thing you guys have put out. It has a lot of richness to it. And, I just want to hear what your take is on what these 3 books are really going to do for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree. Old Gods of Appalachia is an extremely rich and atmospheric and sort of intimate setting, if you will. I mean, obviously it covers the core of the setting is the Appalachian region, which is a large multi-state region. But the nature of the stories that come out of that setting are, the stories of Eldritch horror. I'm betting most people know this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. But, they're stories of Eldritch horror, but rather than being sort of globe-trotting, highly intellectualized stories like you might have in those Call of Cthulhu campaigns, many of which I have played and run and loved, is much more intimate. It's, set around your hometown, your home region, your home county, people protecting your family, protecting the things you value that are all very close to a very close threat. So, the core book came out a year or so ago, and it's been just really successful. I mean, it just continues to be a really, really big seller. Like, we had it at Gen Con, and we ran a whole bunch of events at Gen Con, and, we hadn't really been planning that we would have it be a major cornerstone at Gen Con in its second year. So we were running the same adventure that we ran the previous year, and yet we filled every single table. People really love this game. So, as we saw that developing over the course of this past year, the past number of months, we said, people want more of this, and we'd love to make more. So, you said it's like this, compelling atmospheric setting that we made, but the truth is it comes out of the podcast, and the creators, Cam and Steve, have built this incredibly wonderful environment for their storytelling, which works great for gaming. And then Shauna, as the lead designer, but with Tammy and Dominique and a couple of the other people that were contributing, really ran with it and just really found, I think, what makes that setting sing, and made a great game. And so we were like, let's do more, right? Like, people want more. They want more adventures. They want more lore. They want to be able to do more with their characters. And so that's exactly what Shauna sat down and said, well, if I'm going to do more, what is it going to be? And she came up with, let's do a book for characters, for the players, and that's character options, but it's also backgrounds, it's ciphers, it's just all sorts of things that might appeal to players, lore and stuff like that they can use to enrich their characters and feel like they're really in that space. And then she came up with that's Dig Your Own Grave. Then All Your Gods Are Dead is a sort of GM focused book with lots of good crunchy stuff for the GM, which would include creatures and artifacts and new optional rules. I'm going to talk about the Jack's Fate here in just a minute. And then the third book is called Come Hell or High Water, and it is an adventure book, and it's also like it's sort of a setting book, but unlike a setting book you might do for Numenera, where you want to cover vast areas of terrain because it's a fictitious world that nobody knows. Appalachia is a relatively small, compared to like the world in many games, a relatively small region. It's historical. It's well known. You can get on the internet and find out where the roads are in the towns and things like that. So what Shauna did is she said what people need in their games is they need the places within that. So like individual, like let's focus in on a mine or a small town or a graveyard or whatever, like different specific settings. And then Cam and Steve, who created Old Gods and know that setting, of course, like nobody else, are actually going to come in and they're going to write some little sections that are specific locales that are actually canon locales, not just sort of generic. So it's not going to be a generic mine that you can use in anything adventure you like. It's going to be the Walker House, or it's going to be one of the other locations. And we're hoping that with some stretch goals, we'll actually unlock even some more of those than they're currently planning for the book. So it's going to be it's some really cool stuff. We think it's stuff that people will find really useful to make their games fun and more atmospheric and give them more tools and just more stuff to do with it.
No.
Oh, and I said I was going to wait. Stop. Sorry. Sorry. I want to mention the Jack's Fate because this came out of a conversation. It might even come out like the first inkling of this idea might have even come out of a conversation that I had with you guys at one point. I don't remember exactly where it came from, but I was talking with somebody. God, Dean, maybe it was you. We were talking about like that moment when you're running a game, right? And the action's high, the tension's high or whatnot. It's a Cypher System game. And then as a GM, you want to make something happen and you pull up 2 XP cards and you hold them up. And then you say, and then, we were talking about this and talking about the fact that in the Old Gods universe, you have obviously the same mechanic because it's a Cypher System game, but you also have this element in which making bargains or making agreements with other entities has consequences. And so this idea that like if an NPC or a creature or a haint of the woods or something like that says, oh, you should blah, 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 that's one thing. But if the haint says, oh, you should blah, 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 and you hold up something that indicates this is a meaningful bargain that is being offered, right? How cool that moment would be. And so that's what the Jack's Fate token is going to be. This is this token that we're doing as part of the game. You don't have to use the token, just like you don't have to use XP cards. But there's going to be some little new mechanics, and then there's this actual token that we're making, and the token is like a pendant. And if you back the campaign in the first 48 hours, or if you signed up to be notified, you're going to get one of these for free. It's a $30 value, and it's an alt finish version. So that's I'm throwing in that like cool mechanic, but also my little pitch there for getting in back the campaign real quick.
Well, yeah, that was a conversation we had because those are those great moments in gaming. And I'm a huge fan of props. I love props at the gaming table. And I know a lot of people out there do too, And, MCG does give some pretty cool props, especially for, I'd say for the games just for all your games in general. But when you start thinking about Numenera or you think about Invisible Sun, Invisible Sun gave us the keys and, all of that kind of stuff. Numenera with the pendant. I mean, my pendant is hanging right here on the wall, which is funny. All of those little things that just end up bringing your game together. And one of the strongest selling points, if and you correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the strongest selling points of Old Gods is that it does kind of the level of immersion is almost immediate, and the characters you know, because it's more, like you said, more intimate stories. If done right, you feel your character feels like an imperative to the world, to what's going
Mhm.
on, because it
Mhm.
is so close knit. It's designed in to bring things together. And I mean, when you think about that, and you think about these three books that you're offering, I mean, a, a player focused book with options is just, you know, nobody's going to complain about that. But the book that I think I'm most excited about is the book you're talking about, with which is kind of GM focused, with these kind of mechanics and these kind of
Mhm.
ideas. Because, you know, um I'm just, you know, I'm just spitballing here because I don't know yet. We None of us know what's going to happen. But would there be like, is there like any chance that we might see like a, maybe a new type, or maybe or some
Mhm.
new flavors that might be able to, you know, as far as, you know, for character options and for stuff for the GM to, you know, to kind of offer his players?
So I cannot answer that question just honestly because I haven't seen what Shauna's come up with so far, and I also don't know what she's got left to come up with. She's been working on these books now for a couple of months or so, I think, and you know she's put a lot of work into them so far. There's still a ways to go. Of course, we just this evening announced a stretch goal that's going to make the first book, the player's book, get bigger. So maybe there's some room for that. But honestly, I just don't know the answer to that question. Um, so
Yeah.
I can't answer any specifics about what's in that book or the others, other than what I've kind of said about come hell or high water. I do want to talk a little about two things that you said, which I think are really cool. And you know, if you haven't played Old Gods before, I think a lot about what you said about the nature of the game is very true. The adventure, I just mentioned that we ran it again, the same adventure, this Gen Con that we ran last year. We ran like the better part of 60 sessions of it last year, almost that many, 50 something this year, I think. We had it at Gamehole Con last year, and it ran a dozen or 15 sessions. It's been run at, you know, UK Games Expo and other events as well. I don't know how many convention adventures you've ever played, um, Dean or Al for that matter, that where the players cried at the end, right? But multiple reports from all of these shows of players in tears at the end of that adventure, tears of emotion, because it is such a powerfully written, you know. And again, the nature of the game is very personal. Um, and it's an adventure that you've played it. You know, it's full of
I've
action,
run
it's
it.
full of
I've run it.
mystery.
I've probably run it about 60 times myself.
So how many times have you made your players cry or seen your players cry?
Quite a few. I mean, probably, I'd say probably at least, I'd say at least 10 times. I think I've had people in tears out of, you know, out of 40, 50 games, 10 to
Yeah.
15 times I've had people sitting there with tears, or, you know, get emotional. Um, it's funny because I told Shauna this, and it was funny. Before I went to Gen Con last year, when Old Guys released, you know, when they released
Mhm.
this adventure, you know, Leave Them Ghosts
Mhm.
Alone, I had written an adventure to introduce people, and it was a similar thing.
Mhm.
Friends coming back to town. It was an old mine that they lost kids in. You know, it wasn't one of
Mhm.
their friends that got lost, like in Leave Them Ghosts Alone. And it's funny because there's something in Old Guys of Appalachia that kind of inspires that type of writing, that type of storytelling. And when you tell a story that is so much more interconnected, um, I think it adds another level of immersion. You
Right.
know, I keep saying
Right.
immersion, but Old Guys it's just that. It's one of those things that you feel you feel the moments that you're there.
Yeah. 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 And again, I think you got to go back to the source material and the great work that Cam and Steve have done, the great design work that Shauna and the design team have done on it. And then also, you know, Shauna in particular is just such a incredibly good adventure writer among many other design qualities. She just writes really, really great adventures. They get their hooks into them. Into you. I do want to lean a little bit also into something else that you mentioned the beginning of this segment of the conversation where you talked about props.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
because like we at MCG, we do love that immersive experience. I think we all have had experiences in our gaming lives where we had that exact thing at the moment that made the game really shine because it came to life at the table. And we've done a couple prop sets for Invisible Sun. There's more actually coming in the Wellspring, which is the prop set is actually in layout right now. The prop elements of that are in layout right now. We've done it for we did some for the Magnus Archives, and we're doing it for this in this campaign as well. So in addition to the 3 books, there's a bunch of other cool stuff, but we did lean into that element of it because we're doing a prop set that would be similar to what you would have seen from Invisible Sun or what's coming out for the Magnus Archives, so paper props, tickets, bills, clues, old letters, diary pages, whatever, that sort of thing, and elements that you can make your own props. But then we added to that, we added a stamp set, like, the stamp that, says property of Barrow and Lock or whatever, like, there's a handful of different stamps in the stamp set, so that can just add another element to it to sort of personalize it. And the other one, this is one that's really cool. The vendor that we're working on for the dice actually suggested this and said, we'd love to quote you on this. We think this would be so cool. And they came back with a quote and a proposal, and it was really, really awesome. But we're doing a witch jar, which is like if in the very first episode, like the 0.5 introduction episode called The Witch Queen, talk about she buries these jars at the corner of her property to create wards, and the jar is it's a little mason jar, and it's got a nail and a piece of red yarn, and this, that, or the other thing, and maybe a little bone or something in it. So we're making this replica mason jar that's like one of these wards, this witch jar, and it's going to be about the size of about this size, and have liquid and bits and pieces in it. It's super duper cool. I actually made the mock-up that we did that we used to photograph for the campaign because we don't have one built yet, but the final one will be resin. It won't actually be liquid, so it won't spill. But then it will sit on a base, and when it sits on the base, light shines up inside of it, so you can have it as a display item, and it's got this cool glow. It's gonna be really neat. Or you can just take it off its base and use it at your game table as a prop. And I'm beyond excited about this. It's going to be so cool.
I think that is absolutely cool. And I'm sitting here looking at the some of the additional props. Now, just make sure that hat has the dad curve. It's got to have a dad bill.
Right.
It's got to be, because we're talking about Appalachia. They didn't have no straight.
Right.
They didn't have the snapbacks.
Yeah.
So there's got to make sure we got that curve.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and not to spend all this time being a sales pitch for it, but that's another one where that came from a vendor where we met a vendor, came in at Gen Con this year at Gen Con and said, hey, we're making these hats for Chaosium, for Call of Cthulhu, and we think it would be a super good fit to do something for Old Gods. And we said, oh, okay, we don't know who you people are. Let's see what you got. And they introduced themselves and they showed us some stuff, and it's these really cool. I mean, they're really nicely made. They're made in the United States. It's basically this company that does these really cool sort of high-end custom hats. So we said, you know what? Let's do sort of a modern style one that's a trucker style hat, and then a more vintage style baseball cap, but 100% with the, it's got to feel mid-century. It can't be.
And here's the other thing, Charles, stop talking about sales pitches. This is what we're here for. We're here to promote MCG. We're here to promote you. We're here to promote CU. And guess what? You guys are one big sales pitch anyway. You already have our money, but we love to talk about it because people should really be excited and understand, just what you're getting. Zilzad, he said, nobody does props like MCG. They're fantastic.
Thank you.
So we're not the only ones who feel that way.
Fair enough. But I hope that when I'm on the show, I bring something that's more than what you can get just from a marketing spiel. I mean,
you do. You bring you, and your passion comes through, and that's something else. I have to tell. I like to talk to our fans and let them know this is what you get with every member of the MCG team. They're all this passionate. They're all this real. They're not. Nobody's aloof. Nobody is, so high on their celebrity that they can't sit down and have a conversation. And
for that Reynolds guy.
No, that Reynolds guy. Come on now, listen. I know you're kicking his butt on the show, being on the show and all that, but listen, that guy, that he's a pretty snazzy dude too. He is too. And next time you have him on, ask him about his construction project, because he is renovating this old house that he bought in West Seattle, and it's
it's astonishing what he's doing. It's really cool. Or better yet, come to Gamehole Con, talk to him yourself. You know.
Well, I'll be there.
Well, all right. I'm sorry. I was meaning. I know you're going to be there. I know you guys are all going to be there. But for the rest of the audience, people watching, come on out to Gamehole Con. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be great. Gamehole Con is the best. I'm so sad I missed it last year, but I'm making up for it this year. I'm getting there early on Wednesday, and yeah, it's on. So, Charles,
awesome. Yeah,
we spent the last half hour. We're probably going to circle back around to some more old guy stuff because that always happens.
sure.
But come on, tell people about this great project you're working on, this personal thing you're doing here.
Yeah, well, this is kind of scary because I have run. This has got to be our 27th, 28th crowdfunding campaign for MCG. Almost all of which I have run. But I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign on my own for myself. I don't have the benefit of, starting my campaign off with a 70,000 person email list or, all of the reach that MCG has and whatnot. And so it's been scary. I've been working really hard in the last few weeks, last couple months, actually. But I used to do some fiction writing. I would like to say that I do fiction writing, but the truth is that I don't have time for it this week. And then next thing you know, it's been 2 years since you've actually written anything. So it's been a while since I've done anything that's been a complete project. But I put out a novel about 10 or 12 years ago. Pretty well received by people that read it, but wasn't a big hit or anything like that. Just as an ebook. And now I'm going to crowdfund updated edition of that, an improved edition that's going to also include an audiobook and a print version, and then its sequel, a second book in the series, in all of those formats as well. So I'm pretty excited about that, and that's part of Booktopia, which is Backerkit's program that they're doing where there's a whole bunch of books that are coming out, all being crowdfunded at the same time and collaborating across campaigns and stuff.
And didn't I hear a rumor too that these characters in these books might be written up for a Cypher system?
Yeah. So that's a yeah. I posted that. So you got to go look in the content creation channel there on the CU, but on the Discord, I mentioned it there. But yeah, definitely would want people to know about that. That I'm doing a little special incentive that anybody who backs the campaign who is a member of the CU Discord, I will produce for them a little CSOL PDF, kind of like a glimmer, about the characters in this campaign and this novel. And the novel is set in medieval times in 1197 in Northwest Europe, specifically in Brabant, if you care, on the edge of the Holy Roman Empire and France. And so these characters all come from all walks of life in that environment. And I'll stat them up as detailed NPCs for Cypher System. And if you happen to be running a fantasy or medieval style game, maybe you'll find them interesting. Only for you, CU members.
I'm going to throw another thing out there for you, Charles. You might want to consider. I don't know if it ever thought about it, but if the crowdfunding does good enough, why not produce a 6-12 part podcast maybe of one of the books, or maybe a little offshoot? I got some. I know a couple of people who might be willing to lend their voice to the.
All right. I'm down with it. Sounds great. Love it. Yeah, so, I mean, I got a lot on my plate now, but so we got the campaign launched today, Old Gods campaign. I've got the Alliance Open House this coming week, CypherCon that weekend, and Gamehole Con coming up. But man, pretty much after next weekend when the Booktopia is launched and Alliance has happened and CypherCon has happened and this campaign, Old Gods, is underway, I'm going to be in a much more relaxed place than I've been for the past few months. That's for sure.
Now, one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give the audience a slight overview of, the story of what your book's about, Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. So I'll start with a little bit of backstory that this actually did come out of a game campaign, although it was pretty radically changed up to make it into a good story. But I ran in England, I ran a campaign for 4 years when we lived there that was sort of an Ars Magica D20 mashup. And Tammy played in it. Kate, our marketing manager, was in that gaming group at the time. and a couple other guys, great people. And we played this campaign for like 4 years, and we had a lot of fun. And out of that, I had the basis of the idea for the story. So it's set in 1197. You've got a guy who's very much like us from this time period. This was not part of the campaign, but it's how I decided to spin the tale. But he finds himself there, 1197, with nothing, no clothes, no possessions, doesn't know anything, doesn't speak the language, and he falls in with a noblewoman. And this guy, Martin's his name. He's a civil engineer here in this world. He designs like parking lots and housing developments and things like that. And he when they kind of don't know what to make of this guy who sort of showed up in the middle of their camp naked and gibbering and making no sense. But when they finally sort of suss out that who he is, what he did, where he came from or whatnot, they mistake that as that he's a Mason. And it so happens this noblewoman is desperately needs a Mason for reasons. And so that sort of draws him in. She needs a castle finished that she's about to come under attack from a local overlord who is taking advantage. A lot of history here. 1197, the Holy Roman Emperor has recently died. He's using this opportunity to take advantage of that, take some new territory, because it's going to be years before there's a new Holy Roman Emperor, and he's going to have lots of other fights to fight before he finally gets this corner. So he decides that he's going to take this land from her, but now she's got a Mason to help build the castle. But then there's this weird black magic cult that steals somebody, and all these various subplots, and a piece of the head of St. John the Baptist, and all the rest of the stuff. So it's a historical novel with this interesting time travel element that gives us a first-person character from our world to kind of explore that world, and some bit of touch of horror and supernatural in there too, just a tiny little bit, and big hefty novel that. I don't know. I think it's pretty fast-paced and fun and filled with characters that you love to spend time with.
Well, I can say from experience, I've actually read about the first half of the book. I wrote it on my flight down to Alabama, and everything Charles is saying is actually quite the truth. It's got a great pacing. Story is solid, and it's funny. I know I've said this before, but Charles is the person who has written my favorite Cypher system adventure to run, pre-written adventure, and that's Castaways. So, I can, and I get that kind of feeling. You have this knack for putting characters in I guess you would call it a precarious or almost like a no-win situation, but there's a way out. So it's really, really solidly written. So
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate that. And now that you pointed out, there's certainly a parallel, the fish out of water element of in the adventure Castaway, where the characters, I guess, also show up naked and don't know what's going on, naked and having no possessions. I guess there's a distinct parallel there that I never really saw. But not everything I write involves people showing up naked someplace. But some of them do.
Necessarily showing up naked, but the point is, it's that element though of, like you said though, it's a fish out of water. You're in a place you don't know what's going on, and then to have these things unfold is really good. I mean, it's a talent. It's a gift, because not every writer has that ability. I've seen adventures, I've read books where that was attempted, but it's not necessarily delivered well. Not to say it's a bad idea or a bad story, it just wasn't delivered in a manner, and you do all the heavy lifting is basically what I'm saying. You do the heavy lifting for the creative type, you do it for the imagination, and it's just really well done. So
thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Well, I'm only going to tell the truth, and the other side of that coin is, you do believe in yourself, because you're out here, you're putting yourself out here, you're doing it. But you know what? Kick the door in. Let them know you're here. My name is Charles Ryan, and I wrote a God-blasted book. You don't like it? Too bad.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I will follow your lead and just tell people there's a sign-up page, which I'm betting Al's putting in the comments. It's also in that content creator channel on the CU Discord. Follow that link, sign up to be notified when it launches. As a CU member, get that free PDF, and you'll have my gratitude as well. I also just want to point out there's some other great people involved here. This painting right here is by a guy named Drew Baker. Drew and I go way back. Drew does D&D work. He does Magic the Gathering work. He's done a lot of stuff in the Star Wars universe, Star Wars official fan club, a lot of their official art and stuff like that. He's just a fantastic artist. He did the cover of the first book, and will hopefully, if we fund this whole crowdfunding campaign, do the cover of the second book. Fantastic work. Olivia has also been doing some character work and other graphics work for the campaign, and I don't know if many of you, obviously you, Dean, and but maybe some of the other people watching, listening, know Olivia, have met her at shows or whatnot, or interacted with her online. But she does great character stuff in sort of the fantasy realm, and she's taken on these characters, and I think done some really fantastic portrayals. And I'll be unveiling some of that stuff in the week to come and at the campaign. So I'm lucky that I have some great people on my side to make this happen.
And just for you, those of you out there who are not understanding, Olivia, as he speaks of, this is his daughter. This young woman, I watched her grow up. I watched her at 7 or 8 years old take over the MCG booth and just like go absolutely off the scales, off the rails, selling things, running the cash register. It was amazing. And now she's a young adult, and she's still just as amazing. So Charles, you have a lot to be proud of in that realm as well.
Thank you. Thank you. 100%. 100%.
So modest.
Thank you.
Such a modest guy there. But you guys should know this. The Ryans are an awesome family in general. Tammy, Ray, Ren, Olivia, Charles, they're an awesome group of people, and they're more helpful than you would ever expect them to be, and they do it all from the kindness of their heart. So guys, go out when Charles, sign up to be notified when Charles launches this. Let's take him over the top too, like in the first 6 hours or whatever. Let's get him where he needs to go, and let's get this book printed. Man, I'm enjoying this conversation tonight, believe it or not, after such a stressful day.
Oh, I'm sorry I've had a rough day. A little bit hectic here too. Not stressful per se, but you launch a big campaign. It does make for a long day, a lot going on. So yeah, it is nice to kick back and just chat a bit.
Yeah. So we've talked about, Deeper Still. We've talked about your book. And now let's jump into this little event that's coming up in 2 weekends? 2 weekends from now.
Yeah.
A little thing called CypherCon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just for everybody out there, it is an online convention. It is sponsored by MCG. We're hosting it through the CU. And Charles, people have been asking lots of different questions about, are we going to have a panel this year? Are we going to do these different things? Is there anything you can speak to, or any little trinkets that you want to share with the people out there, that maybe something special we got cooking?
Well, actually, I probably should have asked for a really good briefing on this, because I'm actually not the right person to have on to talk about CypherCon per se. That really is Kate. She's doing all the heavy lifting on it. And Tam and I are going to be at the Alliance trade event, the Alliance Open House, for most of CypherCon, and probably miss big chunks of it. So unfortunately, I don't have an awful lot of special insight. I do know that some things are being lined up seminar-wise, but I don't know the specifics. And I'm sorry that I didn't ask Kate to brief me a little bit before coming on.
No big deal. Well, listen, guys, we got games running. From Friday at noon to midnight, both for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. Sunday is going to be kind of the Old Gods of Appalachia Day. So that's something going to be kind of special. So there will be other events being run, but people are going to be running Old Gods of Appalachia adventures, things set in that particular setting, and so on and so forth. I'm actually going to be running Leave Them Ghosts Alone again at CypherCon on Sunday. So
make your players cry.
It's funny. Old guys is just very inspiring. I don't know if I had told you, but I was telling somebody else. Whenever I run an old guys game, I have to do like the movie opening voiceover, you
Hmm.
know, and you have I describe the mountains and the Appalachia chain and so on and so forth. It's just very inspiring in that sense, And so when people lock in, it's not too hard to stir those emotions.
Right. For sure. For sure. Yeah, so we're really excited about CypherCon. It's something we wanted to do for a really long time, and we did sort of a zero point 0.1 last year, which was pretty successful for what it was, and I think it was put together really quickly. But you guys worked with Kate and made it happen, and it was really cool. And then I think we're really excited about this year being sort of the first. We're calling it CypherCon 1.0, because last year was sort of the trial year, and great things I think ahead for it, and we are looking forward to it. And I don't know do you know how many games are slated? There's a bunch.
Their games are set 4-hour blocks, so from noon to noon, 12 hours. That's 4 games a day, or 4 slots a day, and I think we had 6 GMs per day.
Oh,
So, and we still had a few slots that are open, and if we need to add more slots, we will.
so that's like you're talking about something like north of 50 games.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's even more than I thought. I was thinking it was like 40 something, but wow. So yeah, it is. I think it's gonna be a great event, and we think it's awesome for the community.
Well, the sign up sheet is out and the signups are going in full swing. So we'll see what we have. Um, and unfortunately, you won't be able to be there, because I would have tried to conscript you to run a game. Guys, if you've never played a game with Charles Ryan, that is also a treat. Great GM, very inspiring and make you think about things.
Thank
So,
you.
you know what, Charles, since we're talking about CypherCon, and I already said that Sunday was going to be Old Gods of Appalachia Day. Now, you already told us about the $400,000 stretch goal, basically even more descriptors, background ideas, and other elements. Do you have any idea what the stretch goal after that might be that you could just maybe,
We don't. We usually try to keep those. We try to
I know you try to keep them close to the vest, but
keep them close to the vest. And part of that is not wanting to show our cards too early, but part of that's also we are a bit reactive to what people are saying that they like. That's one of the great advantages of doing a crowdfunding campaign is you can see what people will respond to really well and do more of that thing. Within a certain limitations, right? Because the designers always want to put what's best for the product first. So, which is part of the ethos of the company. So we won't do anything just because that's what the fans want. But you get to learn as the campaign goes on what people are into, what people react well to. I think we would definitely like to expand all 3 of these books. As I mentioned before, Cam and Steve have indicated a willingness to cover even more material if there's demand for that. So that's something we could look at. And there's always other things there on the list of potential ideas.
I'm going to throw one out there that I think would be great, and that would be some terrain style, miniatures, like a cave entrance or a mine entrance, an old shanty shack, things like that. Those I think those things would be huge when it comes to
It would. That's a pretty big ask. That's a big production right there. So
if it happens, it happens. It's just an idea.
And you know what? That's also the kind of thing oftentimes with stuff like, we don't print our own t-shirts, right? We find a good partner for that. We don't make our own hats. We're not going to make the dice. So like maybe there's opportunities there for us to find a partner that makes that sort of thing, that could do something, bespoke for this property.
STL files and, some, because, I've been working on putting my minis together from the weird, good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, Charles, this was a great discussion tonight. And, is there anything else you want to throw out there that you think I may have missed in, our talks and so on and so forth?
I mean, I didn't really come in with a checklist or an agenda, other than sort of the general topics, the three general topics we talked about. I think that probably talking converted here, but like Old Gods is a really, really great property if you like horror gaming at all. So like if you haven't checked it out, I guess the only thing I would add is that we built this campaign to offer supplements to the invested player, but we also built it to be a great place to come into it if you're new to it. So if you haven't played Old Gods, you don't have any of the books, there's backer levels, pledge levels that are designed specifically to get you the core book, as well as other things, and kind of get you going with it. So that's about the only other thing I can think of. I don't know. There's probably something else, but we're just kicking things around.
All right.
Yeah.
It looks like we got a couple of questions too from the audience.
Okay. Cool.
Zilzaddy, he says, from what I could ascertain, MCG was one of the first to look at storytelling podcasts as a place to get new IP. Magnus Archives followed, while others like Free League went from more mainstream IPs. What was the thinking around this strategy, and was it difficult to reaching these agreements?
Great question. That's a really good question. You never want to stand there. Somebody who manages a business, you never want to get in front of people and say, well, there isn't a strategy or there wasn't a strategy. So I'm not going to use those words. But I will say this. We have such a creative team of people, particularly on the design side, but across the board, everybody at MCG is very creative. We have no end of great ideas. So we don't think of ourselves as a company that publishes licensed games. But every so often, there's a property that we see and we're like, man, it sure would be cool to do something in that world. That's such a cool world. And, the Old Gods property sort of came to us from an intermediary, from somebody an individual that we individually, some of us knew, who said, hey, I happen to know that the guys at Old Gods Appalachia have been like looking to get a game made, and they had some other deal and it wasn't that great and they weren't happy with it. So you guys should talk to them. And then we did, and it worked out really well. And, the story's been told many times, but, Tammy is literally from the next town over from the founders of Old Gods of Appalachia. Like her roots run very, very deep in that region. And so there was, in addition to the creative vision being a good fit, we also just had a great personality fit right off the bat. We had some commonalities that made that conversation really easy to have. So in answer to the second part of the question, no, it was not hard to make the deals, because we were able to initiate that conversation. And once the conversation got going, we're sort of saying, well, here's who we are. This is the kind of games we make. And by the way, we speak your language, and we have the cred because we can show you people on our staff who actually literally right there from where you're at. And so it was actually a very easy conversation once we got going. And the Magnus Archives, again, kind of the same thing. I think that you could make the case that the success with Old Gods sort of put us and Magnus Archives, Rusty Quill, the owners of Magnus Archives, on each other's radar. And then we brought we came together and had a conversation, and it worked out really well. And so it was not a difficult conversation in with either of those parties. They're both great partners, and it was very easy. We knew what they had to offer, they knew what we had to offer, and so it was just a matter of saying, hey, let's make this work. So that's how that goes. As far as a broader strategy goes, again, we don't think of ourselves principally as a company that publishes licensed properties, but like everybody else who loves creative things, there are properties out there that we say, man, that would be so cool to make a game about that, right? And so other opportunities may come up. Our strategy is essentially to keep our ear to the ground lightly for properties that we actually love. I don't think we would ever pursue a property to publish a game for a property that we don't look at and say, wow, this will be fun to do.
I can say this, if this is just my view, and you can tell me if wrong or whatever, but what I've noticed with MCG is you guys, you lean into the power of your properties, of your IP. So you don't go and go, you know what, I'm gonna go do, the anime book for Cypher. Though people, call for it and so on and so forth, but you look at it and you go, listen, this podcast or, this property leans into atmospheric nature, leads into a narrative base, and we've had these long discussions on a server about, the narrative nature of Cypher and so on and so forth. But again, the other aspect is Cypher is cinematic.
Right.
So I think you guys have this knack for finding things that can be done cinematically as well as narratively. And, I think, and that's just me looking from the outside looking in, and just conversations I've had that I've noticed that you always try to find something that you can add that cinematic, atmospheric twist,
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? While we're talking about working at other people's sandboxes, right? Like another example would be Tidal Blades. And that's an interesting one because it's not actually our product. It is Druid City's product. We are actually going to be bringing it to market outside of their crowdfunding audience. But that's sort of an afterthought. The key thing, but the thing that is why it's relevant to this conversation is we actually did the design work. Shauna actually did the design work for that. She was the lead designer on that one. And that was another example of where that was a property that we didn't come into it knowing and loving, but they came to us and said, this is the property we have. Look at this gorgeous art. Look at this world that has been built. We think it would make a great RPG, and we think you guys would be good for it. And in that particular case, what we agreed to do was license them the Cypher system before there was a Cypher System open license, and also be the studio, the design studio that designed the product, laid it out and whatnot. And they brought in the world building and the art and so on and so forth. But that's another example of where once we saw what they had in terms of the world, the Navari world, and all this incredible art and this vision for it, and these really cool creatures and settings, all these sorts of things, that we said, our design team, specifically Shauna, said, this is something I can sink my teeth in. I think it would be fun and cool to make a game world out of this. And that's the intersection. Even when we're doing a white book, like you say, like there might be a call for an anime white book or, what have you. The particular place where a white book is going to be made is that Venn diagram intersection between this is what the fans want and this is what the designers want to make, right? And that sweet spot there because again, this, I'm not saying something people don't know, but like we do all our design in-house and we design the things that we want to make, not what a survey tells us to make or a marketing department tells us to make or anything. I mean, I'm the marketing department. I don't tell people what to make. You know what I mean? It's yeah.
Well, I mean, and I guess, what, I think that's another beautiful thing about MCG being the type of company that it is. You're not predicated upon by a board of directors and people that just say, make me more money,
Right.
Churn out as much crap as you can, right. Because now you have notoriety in a name and people are going to spend their money because of your notoriety in your name. We appreciate as fans of MCG, as fans of all of the creators and everybody who works for the company, we appreciate that, what we get is always quality. The passion that the creators have comes through the product, and it's never, you haven't let us down yet. So thank you.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Our other question from the audience, it says, do you think it's harder to create one-shots in Old Gods of Appalachia than longer arcs or campaigns? It seems to lead into reoccurring NPCs, lingering threats, etc.
So I have not written any adventures for Old Gods, so I am not in a position to be able to answer that, like from a first person perspective. I like writing one-shot adventures. I like running long campaigns. And I think it can work either way. Well, either way, right? Like, but I'll go back to Best Leave Them Ghosts Alone, where it's a very emotionally powerful adventure, and yet it's designed to be written not just as a one-shot, but a 4-hour one-shot in a convention. To be run in a room full of noisy tables all around you and still get that effect. So certainly, I think that it's got strengths for both. But as a guy who writes adventures, I don't have enough hands-on experience to be able to.
I can say it this way. I can speak to that, Just
Yeah,
a
because
long-term.
you've run a lot more old gods
Yeah.
than I have, for example.
From a personal perspective, no, it's not any harder to write a one shot for Old Gods of Appalachia than it is for anything else. The reality of it is, though, the reality of writing a one shot for Old Gods of Appalachia is it always has the potential to be the beginning of a campaign. It
Right.
always has the beginning to be the potential. It's it's a story arc waiting to happen, and and that's because the stories are not 99% of the time, if you're doing something for old gods, it might be the world ending thing, but it's more so the it's your family. It's very intimate. It's
Right.
your neighbors, your town. So it's easy to build on that. It's easy for that to go, you know, um, to grow. And
Right.
your cat is beautiful. What's the cat's name?
This is Sky. I had to pick her up because she was going to rub against the computer and knock it over, make the lid. There she goes. She is, we call her the sweetest kitty. She's very, very sweet. She loves to be close when you're doing stuff, but she does not like to sit in your lap.
Nice.
And she's rubbing against the lid of the laptop now, so hopefully she won't knock it over or close the lid on us.
All right, we have one more question that just popped in. From Zilzad. He says, question, will Invisible Sun and all your other properties be released under the Sea, Soul, and Time?
So Invisible Sun almost certainly will not, because it's not a Cypher System game. It's a different rule set. So I don't think we're looking ahead toward doing that for Invisible Sun per se. Other properties, yes, we are thinking about how that would work. We think about that on a weekly basis as we continue to develop the character builder in particular, but Cypher tools in general. And the character builder had, as I understand it, a pretty big drop yesterday or today with a new revision to it and a bunch of feature changes and upgrades and whatnot. So that is a work in progress. Our intention at this stage is to continue to make that tool better and better, and as we go, learn about how to make it better and better, so that we can someday have a tool that would be able to address all of the MCG properties, or at least all of the Cypher System properties, and not just the ones that currently exist within the CSRD. But concurrently, as part of that, we are being very aggressive about getting material into the CSRD as soon as it becomes available when it's core Cypher material. That's why you see white books come out, like It's Only Magic, comes out, and within a week or 10 days, we tend to have that content into the CSRD, which serves not just the publishing community, third-party publishing community, but also the Cypher System character builder as well. So, it's a work in progress. Someday, we do foresee that Numenera would be in it, perhaps Old Gods would be in it, perhaps the Magnus Archives, perhaps Tidal Blades, perhaps the Strange. Everything there has the potential, everything that's core Cypher, or very close to it, has the potential to ultimately be in there once we're happy that it is where it needs to be to support all of that.
Charles, listen, I'm not going to keep you any longer. This was a great talk.
Yeah, it's great to be
really
here.
appreciate you coming on the show and hanging out with us and giving insights into all the great stuff that's MCG. So anybody out there who might be on the fence, who don't realize it yet, there's 24 days left, but go ahead, take the plunge, back deeper still. It's going to be great because MCG doesn't put out trash. They never have. I mean, I've got a ridiculous bookshelf to prove it.
Thank you.
So that's number one. Number two, sign up for Charles's to be notified about his Backerkit that's going to come up for his next novel. Again, you can't go wrong. It's a book. Hey, reading is fundamental and broaden your mind. Just jump in there and take the plunge and take a trip with Charles. I promise you, he won't disappoint.
Thank you.
Finally, CypherCon is coming. CypherCon is on the horizon. So if you have not signed up for a game, sign up for a game. If you still want to GM, I'm quite sure we can make a concession and figure a way to get you on the roster to GM. And CypherCon is going to be, they call it Gen Con the best 4 day. No, this is going to be the best 3 days in gaming because Cypher does not disappoint. If you're a fan, you're not disappointed when you walk away from a Cypher game. And with all of that, if you like us and you like what we do, you know what? Please give us a follow here on Twitch. If Twitch isn't your thing, you can always like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Our videos will go up on YouTube the next day, as always. If you want to support us some way financially, you can, get some of this gear like I'm wearing, CypherCon, Cypher Unlimited shirt, CypherCon shirts, and oh look, the kitty. The CypherCon shirts will be available as well at the Cypher Unlimited t-shirt shop. If that's not your thing, you can always give us a donation on Ko-fi. All these things go to things like our giveaways and doing things like this, doing CypherCon and so on and so forth. Finally, if none of those are your thing, you can always check us out on Facebook. It's not as big as our YouTube channel, but there's always discussions being had there as well. And like I said, on the CU, the Discord, we are always got games going. There's always great discussions. You can always get advice, information, and a good conversation about Cypher System and anything MCG related. And with all of that being said, we love you guys.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for swinging by to hear about Old Gods Deeper Still and about Charles's upcoming novels and CypherCon. All very exciting stuff. So if you haven't checked out those links, be sure to hit them. They were in the chat, and if you're watching this on YouTube, they'll be down below. And thank you again so much, Charles, for coming on to talk to us about those things. We really appreciate that. And Sean is definitely going to have to come on and try to beat that record. You are surpassing him by a lot now.
All right.
But yeah, that was an awesome talk. Thank you again so much. And as usual, from us at the CU, we will see you later. Peace.